whomever you love, we welcome you.
Good morning and welcome to our virtual broadcast here at First Unitarian Church of Toledo. While we miss seeing you in person, we love keeping our community safe and waving from a loving distance online. Just a couple of announcements. I want to remind everyone that we will be having our annual Poinsettia Sale. If you need something to liven up your home or to send a gift for someone else, please follow up with us either in the chats or through your FYI, and we will make sure that you're able to place a poinsettia order. We appreciate your continued support. We'll also have our chocolate bar sales this year. Those might be available for pickup with your poinsettias, or if you're interested in receiving some, let us know and we'll find a way to get you those chocolates.
Our opening words today are by Luke Stevens Royer. This is a poem he wrote in 2016 titled Prayer Ballot. I walk in as on pilgrimage. The altar cloths are red, white, and blue. The ushers are the women who have been running these things, who have been running everything since before I was born. I'm handed the ballot like a scroll because the questions seem that important, ancient and modern, of what my God and country ask of me. Who? Who for commissioner, mayor, president? Who for District 8, Ward 7, school board? Who will do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly? I make my mark with at least a shred of hope that something good will come from this. And regardless, I remember, the world won't be destroyed entirely by this. The world won't be saved entirely by this. The world won't be saved entirely by me. Marking my vote is like kneeling in prayer because neither will accomplish anything right away. But the purpose of both is to remind me of my deepest hope for the world that I'm trying to help create. So I rise from prayer and turn in my ballot and remember the who is me and us and we the people. And again, I set to the task that is mine, justice, mercy, humble service in my small corner of the world.
In our chalice lighting today, I have the opportunity to read, written by Timothy Snyder, Life is Political. Life is political not because the world cares about how you feel, but because the world reacts to what you do. The minor choices we make are themselves a kind of vote, making it more or less likely that free and fair elections will be held in the future. In the politics of the everyday, our words and gestures, or their absence, count very much. The symbols of today enable the reality of tomorrow.
And you who are viewing, please join me in reciting the covenant of this congregation. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. And for our congregational singing today is number 346, Come Sing a Song with Me.
Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time.
Now it's story time with our interim religious educator, Soroya King. R.E. Roya, please tell us a story.
Thank you. Good morning. It's my privilege to read in your hearing a fantastic story written by a UU minister, Polly Peterson. It's called Olympia Brown Gets the Vote. Olympia Brown was the minister of a Universalist church in Weymouth Landing, Massachusetts. She had struggled long and hard to become an ordained minister, and she loved her job. But in 1867, two leaders in the fight for women's rights, Lucy Stone and her husband, Henry Blackwell, had persuaded Olympia to go to Kansas to campaign for an amendment to the Kansas Constitution, an amendment that would give women the right to vote. Another amendment on the ballot would give Black men the right to vote. If both amendments passed, Kansas would be the first state to grant universal suffrage, the right of all adult citizens, Black, white, women, and men, to vote. When it came time to vote, the men of Kansas defeated both amendments. Fewer than 1/3 of them supported women's suffrage. Olympia felt the defeat keenly. But Susan B. Anthony, the leading woman suffrage leader, wrote her in an uplifting letter. Never was defeat so glorious a victory. She wrote, "We shall win. The day breaks." In 1868, the 15th Amendment to the United States Constitution passed, and in 1870, it was ratified. This amendment gave the vote to Black men, but women were still excluded. This was a terrible disappointment to Olympia Brown. In 1884, she became president of the Wisconsin Women's Suffrage Association. And in 1887, she resigned her ministry to work full-time for women's rights. It was now 26 years since she had campaigned in Kansas, and she still had no right to vote. In 1906, Susan B. Anthony died. 60 years of tireless work had not won her the ballot. And now it was 40 years since Olympia Brown had campaigned in Kansas, but she still had no right to vote. In 1913, two young activists named Alice Paul and Lucy Burns invited Olympia Brown to join them in a new political party called the Congressional Union. In 1916, the party changed its name to the Women's Party. We cannot say that the United States is a democracy as long as women cannot vote, said Olympia Brown. We're being asked to give up our suffrage work until the war is over. Women were asked to do this same thing during the Civil War. They were told that as soon as the war was over and the Negro enfranchised, they would be given the ballot. But that did not happen. Instead, they were ridiculed for wanting to vote, and we still do not have the ballot. It was now 50 years since Olympia Brown had campaigned in Kansas, and she still had no right to vote. President Woodrow Wilson finally gave his support to women's suffrage, and Congress passed the 19th Amendment. On Election Day morning, November 2nd, 1920, Olympia Brown made her way to the polling station. She was one of the first to vote. It was 53 years since she had campaigned in Kansas, and she had won the right to vote at last. She was 83 years old.
Thank you so much for that story, Roya. Our anthem today will be a slight change from what's in the FYI. We'll be featuring a guest musician. My friend Humay Gasimzadeh has generously shared a piece from her new album with us. I'd like to remind us, as we experience this domestic anxiety, it's important to consider the importance of foreign policy in our life and our role as global citizens. This is from her album of improvisations. Kilsalera Susepmisham is a combination with Fidan Agayeva Edler, and this is a note from Humay. This album is based on her piano and Fidan's toy piano improvisations on 7 Azerbaijani folk songs. They'd like to dedicate The Black Garden, this album, to all war victims. All proceeds will go to the fundraiser for the families directly affected by the war. In the light of recent bombardments in Ganja and Barda, with dozens of civilians dead and hundreds injured, this is especially actual. If you'd like to learn more about their album, it's available on Bandcamp, and we encourage enjoyment in the part that we're so missing nowadays. So with that, I would love to turn to our tech team. We'll share Kilsalera Susepmisham.
Now, please join me for a time of meditation, contemplation, and prayer. It is election time, and in many ways that's foremost in our thoughts. But life goes on as well, and we have experience of health and illness, of love, of death, things in the world, things beyond our control. And yes, it does come back to the election. And the election is also a factor when we think of family, when we think of community, when we think of how we can be together and how we can be together well. For our meditation reading today, this is written by Gary Kowalski. The title is Election Day. He wrote, "It is the day before the election as I write these lines, and whatever the outcome, I will be glad when it's over. Some will be elated by the results, and others will feel dejected. But regardless of who wins or loses, our world will still be broken and suffering from ills that government is powerless to cure. Our lives will still be chaotic and in need of tranquility. Grief and loss will continue to haunt us. We will still face the challenge of finding meaning and a faith that can sustain us through tough times. Campaigning in America often carries messianic overtones, and politicians collude in the drama by puffing their biographies to mythic proportions. They make big promises, but no new administration can deliver friendship, peace of mind, personal integrity, or a sense of self-worth. Finding the qualities that make life worth living, building them into our daily lives, and passing them along to our children will continue to be our personal responsibility, regardless of who controls town hall, who controls Congress, or who controls the White House. Voting is important, but there are many other ways in which we can exercise power in our own lives and influence the world for the better. Self-government, after all, begins at home, with how I treat my neighbor, relate to my family, care for my community, and how I work and play. Hope for the future depends less on who gets elected than our ability to exercise our own power for good." Now let's observe 1 minute of silence.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea.
come to
Our reading today, we have words by John Lewis. Ordinary people with extraordinary vision can redeem the soul of America by getting in what I call good trouble, necessary trouble. Voting and participating in the democratic process are key. The vote is the most powerful, nonviolent change agent you have in a democratic society. You must use it because it is not guaranteed. You can lose it.
If you haven't voted already, please do. Unitarian Universalists have as one of their principles that congregations affirm and promote the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. And separation of church and state does not at all mean that religious people shouldn't vote. If you're a citizen, use your voting rights. In Lucas County, Ohio, where our church is located, the early vote center is open from 1 to 5 today and 8 until only 2 tomorrow. And then on Tuesday, the general election day, the actual election day, the polls are open from 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. People in precincts 15G and 15I will vote here at First Unitarian. If you have an absentee ballot, as long as it's postmarked no later than tomorrow, the day before the election, it can still travel through the mail and theoretically be received no less than 10 days after the election, which is that receipt date. The final receipt date is Friday the 13th, if you want to put anything into that. And that time frame is when your vote can still be counted. But rather than the mail, you might use a ballot drop box at one government center on Jackson Street or 1301 Monroe Street, the early vote center. And your ballot has to be in there by 7:30 tomorrow evening. Now, this is an election sermon, and I'm all decked out for the election, you might say. I have stars on my stole. I have stripes on my shirt. Yes, I'm wearing red, white, and blue. And I have a little badge from the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee that says, use your vote or lose your voice. So the election is very important, especially in many ways this year. Because this is an election year, and our denomination has made a special effort to engage the electorate with our UU the Vote program, I decided to give 2 sermons on democracy as religion and to encourage those who have the right to vote to use it. That right to vote for women, you heard from Soroya's story, is only 100 years old this year. Part 1 of my series was just before the primary elections, way back on March 8th. And that one happened to be the last of our in-person services before the COVID-19 pandemic made it advisable that we not provide an atmosphere for the coronavirus to circulate among people. Today, you get part 2, the general election edition. There are people, not just political scientists, historians, philosophers, and pundits, but even we, the people, who see democracy, especially with the culture and system of the United States, as a national religion. Some follow it, others participate in it too, kind of as elected clergy, you might say. A Unitarian minister, A. Powell Davis of All Souls Church in Washington, D.C., called this way America's real religion, the spiritual basis of democracy, and said it is the highest faith attainable. The Unitarians' Beacon Press published a book about it in 1949 based on a sermon series he gave. He said that in spite of people's institutional allegiances, including to religious organizations, Americans are so much more attached to the basic democratic faith than to all others that, in a pinch, this is the faith to which they would adhere. America's real religion, Davis's term, is known as civil religion in much usage, a term that traces to philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau. The sociologist Robert Bellah made the tie to Rousseau and to the beginning of the United States in a prominent 1967 journal article, Civil Religion in America, in the publication Daedalus. In Chapter 8, Book 4 of the Social Contract from 1762, Rousseau outlines the simple dogmas of the civil religion, Bellah wrote: the existence of God, the life to come, the reward of virtue and the punishment of vice, and the exclusion of religious intolerance. All other religious opinions are outside the cognizance of the state and may be freely held by citizens. Bellah stated that the religious critics of religion in general, or the religion of the American way of life, or of American Shinto, have really been talking about the civil religion. At its best, it has neither been so general that it has lacked incisive relevance to the American scene, nor so particular that it has placed American society above universal human values. I am not at all convinced, Bellah said, that the leaders of the churches have consistently represented a higher level of religious insight than the spokesmen of the civil religions. Now, I'm using the term civic religion with a nod to the civics classes of the schooling of some of us. Unitarian Universalist minister Marjorie Lemming, in a 2003 essay, gives more of the American religion context. The president, whatever his private religious views, operates under the rubrics of civil religion whenever he is in his official capacity, she wrote. The Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the inaugural addresses, as well as other significant addresses of the president, make up the sacred scripture of our civil religion of democracy. Our national holidays provide an annual ritual calendar for civil religion. Memorial Day, Thanksgiving Day, the 4th of July, Veterans Day, Flag Day, Columbus Day, maybe not as much with some raised consciousness over the intervening years, I add, and the combined birthdays of Washington and Lincoln all serve to integrate American citizens into the national cult. Theologian Harvey Cox, in his 1965 book, The Secular City, Secularization and Urbanization in Theological Perspective, included words about society de-emphasizing traditional religion, and it fits well with the concept of civic religion, as well as with the decline of religion in all aspects, it seems, in today's world, including civic religion. We won't get into the larger secularization premise today, but I do want to raise his point about JFK. We have yet to measure the enormous contribution made by the brief administration of John F. Kennedy to the desacralizing of American society, Cox wrote. In the way he fulfilled the office, In his quiet refusal to function as the high priest of the American religion, Kennedy made an indispensable contribution to the authentic and healthy secularization of our society. He was a supremely political leader, though there can be little doubt that his Christian conscience informed many of his decisions, especially in the area of racial justice. He stalwartly declined to accept the semi-religious halo that Americans deprived of a monarch who reigns gratia Dei have often tried to attach to their chief executive. This does seem to glorify democracy somewhat by deifying, despite Kennedy, doesn't it? I'm not just preaching hold on, I lost my place. Hold on. Where am I? There we go. I'm not just preaching a go to church by voting sermon, though. We need to change the ways of civic religion so that we can make a better world. Bishop William J. Barber II, a co-founder of the Poor People's Campaign, stated in his 2018 book, Revive Us Again, Vision and Action in Moral Organizing, a fundamental contradiction lies at the heart of American democracy. There is a tension between the ideals of unalienable political and economic rights for all and the legacy of racism, sexism, exploitation, poverty, and economic inequality that run deep in the American experience. In the all too frequent dissonance between our ideals and our reality, however, we find prophetic hope. Our ideals expose our flaws and inspire us to repair the breaches and heal the nation. Social and economic progress in America is built on our resolution of this contradiction in the direction of our highest ideals. Barber says that our faith tradition and Constitution are clear. We must stand up for justice and tell the truth. What America needs, he proclaims, is a moral reset. The structural inequality endemic to the United States today is not preordained, and it need not persist. The poor do not always have to be with us. Moral abdication in the face of endemic poverty is born out of fear and feeds false ideas of scarcity and a politics of polarization that weakens the heart of our democracy. To restore the legitimacy of our democracy, people of conscience must resist narrow, regressive thinking and reclaim the high moral ground. We need to rebuild public trust, revive the country's faith in its better angels, and re-envision America's public policies through the moral lens of justice and the constitutional principle of the common good. We do that, though, not just through government and the electoral process, but through our own institutions, including churches and nonprofit organizations. Eric Kleinenberg wrote in his 2018 book, Palaces for the People, how social infrastructure can help fight inequality, polarization, and the decline of civic life. It's long been understood that social cohesion develops through repeated human interaction and joint participation in shared projects, not merely from a principled commitment to abstract values and beliefs. Alexis de Tocqueville admired the laws that formally established America's democratic order, but he argued that voluntary associations were the real source of the nation's robust civic life. Kleinenberg cites conservative pundit Charles Murray arguing that the American project has always been based on human beings coming together voluntarily to solve their joint problems. This civic culture was once so widely shared among Americans that it amounted to a civil religion, Murray had said. Kleinenberg points out that Murray's point is an echo of Tocqueville, but recently Kleinenberg adds, and here is the source of Murray's book title, Coming Apart, the new upper class has effectively abandoned the collective project, forming a separate society based on spatial, economic, educational, cultural, and to some degree, political isolation. Unless the nation renews its sense of solidarity across class lines, Murray warns, everything that makes America exceptional will have disappeared. I think we see that in the current presidential administration. And that's another call for participation to voters. In 1949, A. Powell Davis wrote that the time for this religion has arrived, the only religion that can save us and heal our dissensions and build a world of justice and liberty and peace. He concludes his book, for the faith upon which democracy is based, the faith within democracy, is neither local nor ephemeral. It is the victory of truth over superstition, of liberty over servitude, of the universal over the provincial, of ennoblement over debasement, of brotherhood over exclusiveness, of God of light over the gods of shadows, of love over fear. It is the higher religion which has always struggled with the lower, the religion and the only one that can lead the stricken world of the present into a happier, more hopeful future. More than 70 years have passed, and that religion has not yet arrived as needed. We still need to work toward it, with the greater social attention brought to our consciousness by social justice challenges, by systemic abuse, by corruption, by, yes, the human condition. We need civic religion to help us become our better selves. Now, please do your civic duty, and if you haven't already cast your ballot, you the vote. So be it.
We've now come to our time of offering. I know our church life looks like most life very different this year, but I remind you how critical your support is to maintaining this space of solace. I invite you to reflect on the role this community plays in your life and how you can in turn support your community. We need you now so we can build our new normal together. Thanks to all who have supported the church already with your pledge. If you're so moved, please consider giving in our virtual passing of the plate at the link in the comments, uutoledo.org/donate. And you can also click on give and then go to online giving. If you're more of a cash or check person, you can always support the Postal Service by putting a stamp on and sending to Glendale Avenue here at 3205 in Toledo. We also remind you to stay connected with our poinsettia sales and candy sales this coming winter.
And our coming soon, we always try to give a little pitch for what's through the week and into next week. Next week's 10 a.m. Spiritual Adventures Forum will be a Citizens Climate Lobby update with Steve Roberts and Julie Shapiro of the Climate Reality Project and the Citizens Climate Lobby, respectively. They'll present a discussion called One Part of the Solution, an Important Update. And our 11 a.m. service next week, not knowing what the outcome of the election will be, if it even will be known by then, is simply sigh.
We look forward to seeing you then, and we also invite you to join us immediately after today's service for our social hour on Zoom. If you're a newcomer or a visitor, please feel free to join us. Our Zoom password is on the screen, along with our meeting code. We have a little time to have coffee and fellowship from the safety and comfort of our homes.
Now, our closing words, I repeat these words that I also recited at our primary elections edition. These are by the president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, Susan Frederick Gray. For Unitarian Universalists, this is a faithful moral action because democracy and the right of all people to have a voice and a vote are at the very heart of our 7 principles. This work is about the inherent worth and dignity of every person. It is about restoring right relationship with the planet. It is about our commitment to justice and equity for all people. We are called to courageously embody the deepest values of our faith with our hearts, bodies, and spirits while building toward an abundant future in which all are free and flourishing.
As we send the flame today from our ever-burning chalice, I would like to read in your hearing the prayer on the eve of an election by Tess Baumberger. Spirit of wisdom, as we prepare to elect new citizens to lead us in our communities, towns, and cities, in our counties, states, and our heart-torn nation, grant us wisdom and discernment so that we may choose those of peaceful heart, of competent mind, and of servant spirit. Spirit of the harvest, help us to winnow the grain from the chaff and to reap the legacy of freedom our founders planted for all of us. Help us to gather together as one people, united in concern for this country, founded upon such promising ideals. Spirit of healing, grant that we may bridge the breaches that have opened between us. Help us to understand one another, to listen to the stories of who we are, and to find the common ground on which we can move forward together. Our closing hymn is in the tradition of those who have voted before us, have walked the road and the path to justice and freedom. Guide our feet, guide our feet.